Everybody, and thank you so much for being here for yet another SCRIBO seminar. And today's topic is very hot because the Phaistos disc has fallen prey to so many decipherment attempts, with probably as many attempts to discredit its authenticity. So is it fake or is it not? And can it be deciphered, or should we just give up on even trying? And if you're here expecting answers to the second question, namely, can it be deciphered, we are sure to provide with a huge disappointment to you, because the Phaistos disc is the most devilish of all scripts in all the history of writing, a mystery within the mysteries of all undeciphered scripts. And despite this, our, I have to say, very brave guest today will at least try to shed light on some of the thick layers of all this darkness. And let me, without much further ado, introduce Giorgia Baldacci, who is based at the University of Venice and who's a specialist in Minoan pottery. She's worked for many years at Phaistos and also at the site of Yatriada under the aegis of the Italian Archaeological School. She's held very many prestigious scholarships, amongst which I should cite the Michael Ventris Award, which was awarded to her this year. So she won the 2020 Michael Ventris Award. On what topic, Giorgia?
On the Potter's Mark from Phaistos. And you can see that this topic is related to the disc too. So you will discover some parts of my research here today.
Oh, fantastic. So we get a sneak preview. Great. And I'm also told as a sneak preview that a book is forthcoming, and I take it with the title Yatriada, I livelli protopalaziali, so the protopalatial levels. And before I leave the floor to Giorgia, let me just remind you that we have another SCRIBO in 2 weeks' time, as usual, on the 28th of October, and we will be delighted to welcome Stephen Chrysomalis, who is one of the world's top experts in the first numerical notations from all over the world, and he's going to be talking about them, so the invention of numbers, vis-a-vis the invention of writing. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Giorgia, over to you, and welcome, Giorgia, to our SCRIBO seminar. The Phaistos disc, an enigmatic script in its cultural context. Thank you, Giorgia, for being here.
First of all, I want to thank Silvia Ferrara and her team for inviting me. I want to thank also Barbara Montecchi and Miguel Valerio. I want to thank also, it's really a pleasure and an honor to be here as part of this SCRIBO series of webinars. I want also to thank everybody who is joining the webinar. I don't see them, but I hope that someone is there. And I want also to say that I am not an expert in ancient scripts. So what I'm going to do today in this webinar is to try to approach the disc with an archaeological perspective. So I'm not going to decipher the disc, unfortunately. Let's start. The Phaistos disc is one of the most famous Minoan artifacts. The reputation of the disc results from its uniqueness and its enigmatic nature, and it is of a peculiar appearance and displays an undeciphered script. For its iconic look, in recent years, it has been chosen as the logo of the Italian Archaeological School at Athens, representing the discoveries made in Crete by the Italian Archaeological Mission. The disc is well known and appreciated also on a popular level, as we can see from its massive use on the souvenir, jewels, and clothing that it is possible to find in Cretan shops. In mass culture, it has become the emblem of Minoanness. Just to give an example, in the slide we see that the image of the disc used in the artwork of the album titled Minoans by a North American heavy metal band. The disc was recovered in 1908 in the palatial site of Phaistos, Crete, during the fieldwork carried out by the Italian Archaeological Mission under Luigi Pernier's direction. It was not found during regular excavations, but at the end of the day, during an evening inspection by the foreman Zacharias Siliakis. He spotted the disc in room 101 of the so-called northeastern complex, located next to the northeastern edge of the palace. That is here. Room 101 is L-shaped, and its northern segment comprises 7 cysts, called caselles by the excavators, defined by mud bricks. The disc lay in the east part of this, in the northwestern corner of space 8, as numbered by Pernier. The disc was found here. The stratum in which the object was found was at the destruction level, disturbed during the Hellenistic times. Recent fieldwork carried out in 2013 and 2015 by Pietro Militello clarified the context in which the disc was brought to light more than 1 century before. During the fieldwork, a fragment of a linear A tablet, pH 54, was identified in room 101, inside the room's westernmost cyst, at the northwestern corner of the building. The new tablet was identified here. It was the habit of the first excavators, when circumstances dictated, to refill an area using the very art and pottery fragments that had removed from the same area itself. Militello has therefore argued that the new tablet was part of the original deposit of the room, and that to this original deposit belonged also the linear A tablet pH 1, which was found here together with the disc by Pernier. The pottery the new tablet was associated with was shown to be substantially homogeneous, dating to Middle Minoan 3A ripe, with both a few older and more recent shards. Now let's take a look to the principal features of the disc. The disc has a diameter of 16 centimeters and is 2 centimeters thick. It is made in fine clay, arguably fired intentionally, thus differing from the preserved linear A and B tablets, which were made in raw clay and only accidentally fired. It is stamped on both sides, and the inscription follows a spiral pattern. The incised spiral runs from periphery to the center. Some vertical small lines define 61 fields that contain groups of signs from 2 to 7 elements in each. Such signs, in total 242, are made from 45 different stamps, likely of metal. For this reason, the disc is considered as the first example of a written document made using movable type. Scholars generally agree in recognizing the signs as syllabograms, that is, graphemes representing syllables, which had to be read following the incised spiral from periphery to center. Due to the disc's utter uniqueness in every way, many contrasting views and theories on the artifact have developed. On the one hand, the disc has attracted enthusiasts of mysterious objects who proposed the interpretations and decipherments, many of whose are pseudoscientific or sometimes esoteric. In the slide, we see the summary of the Wikipedia page titled Phaistos Disc Decipherment Claims, that I feel is quite incomplete, but it's just to give an idea. In this web page are listed 18 decipherment attempts in 6 different languages, plus some interpretations of the script as ideographic writing. On the other hand, in academia, the disc has been sometimes regarded with suspicion, and despite its fame, generally, it's not even much mentioned in Aegean Bronze Age handbooks. This is due to the lack of parallels and clear contextual and chronological data attending its discovery, and also to the fact that more than once since its finding, the disc has been considered a forgery. This view was voiced again around 10 years ago by Jerome von Eisenberg in a series of articles and lectures, reaching thus a large audience. In von Eisenberg's opinion, it was Vernier, director of the excavations at Phaistos, who got a forger to make the disc, as he was jealous of the epigraphical discoveries then occurring in other archaeological sites. With this forgery, Vernier wanted to elevate the status of his excavations to that of sites like Knossos and Gortys, where many written documents had been recovered. In order to make the disc, Vernier took inspiration from an Etruscan object, the Magliano disc, found in 1882, which, like the Phaistos disc, is characterized by an inscription written following a spiral pattern. In this webinar, we are going to see that the Phaistos disc, while remaining in many respects a unicum, is not a completely isolated artifact in Minoan culture. Actually, within the material culture of Phaistos, there do exist some elements that permit a better understanding of the disc. The study of the proto-palatial clay artifacts of the site, in particular of the potmarks and of the impressed fine ware, has led to the identification of some clues that point to the fact that the item is a genuine Minoan artifact and that clarify its chronological context. Let's start with relief potmarks. Relief potmarks that I have been studying since 2014 are to be found on semi-coarse vessels, generally plain or simply painted with bands in dark on light. Such potmarks, though, are absent on the well-known Camares fine ware, painted in polychromy on a dark background. Vases with relief potmarks come from the three most important sites of the Western Messara, those of the so-called Great Minoan triangle of the Messara, which share the same ceramic tradition, that is Phaistos, located here, Yatriada, located 3 kilometers from the former, and Comos, here, farther off, and the port overlooking the Libyan Sea. The only other examples are found in the palatial center of Malia, which is here, on the north coast of the island. The appearance of such marks is much restricted to the proto-palatial era, 19th and 18th century BC, being attested in the Messara area in all the ceramic phases of the period, that is Middle Minoan 1b, Middle Minoan 2a, and Middle Minoan 2b. Only a couple of examples have been found in contexts dated to Middle Minoan 3a, the first Neopalatial phase corresponding to the 17th century BC. Afterwards, this practice seems to disappear, likely as a consequence of the changes observed in technology and society after the fall of the first palaces. The potmarks are mostly badly preserved due to the partial preservation of the pots and to the flaking of their surface. They consist of quite elaborate motifs, as we can see in the examples in the slide, left in relief on the external base of the vases. Such marks are formed from contact with the uppermost part of the wheel head arrangement, the so-called bat, which bore the sign incised in negative. The bat, as it has been possible to ascertain through the observation of the chaîne opératoire in the Cretan traditional potters' workshops during the 20th century, was a removable device and will have been placed on the wheel head. It was secured by raw clay to the wheel head below. This assured its adhesion and also could be used to guarantee the device was revolving horizontally. The vase was molded and let dry on the bat, acquiring thus its central motif as a relief. During the drying phase, the bat was removed from the wheel head, so further pots on other bats could be produced. Such bats have been recovered in Phaistos Palace at Yatriada and in Cartier-Mont at Malia. Being made during the first stages of the vessel's manufacture, the relief potmarks on the vase's bottoms belong to the class of the pre-firing marks, clearly distinguished from the marks applied in the later stages of life of the pot, that is signed, scratched, or incised after firing. At the same time, relief marks are different in nature from the usually simple sign incised in clay prior to firing, which are found in the same sites and the levels. Here in the slide, we see on the left a jar with an incised fishbone motif from a Yatriada, compared to a vase with a relief mark from the same site on the right. More generally, simple incised signs are used as marking systems not only in many Cretan, Aegean, and Eastern Mediterranean sites throughout the Bronze Age, but also in cultures distant to each other in time and space, albeit not necessarily with the same meaning and function. Just to give some examples, in this slide we can see the incised pre-firing marks found in the Aeginetan pottery of the Middle and Late Helladic in the Greek mainland. Here we see some examples of incised pre-firing marks on late Bronze Age pottery from Anatolia. Again, some incised pre-firing marks on the pottery of the Peruvian Moche culture, dated from the 1st century BC to the 8th century AD. Relief marks found in Proto-Palatial Crete are different from this kind of simple incised marks in three ways. 1, they show complex motifs. 2, they are made with a specific device, the aforementioned bat. And 3, they are located on the vase bottom and not at the visible point of the vessel. Moreover, in comparison to incised marks, they have a very limited distribution, being attested only at a few Cretan sites and only for a specific time span. The studies carried out on the marked vessels from the Messara sites agree in identifying the marks as indicators of the craftsman or workshop that produced the vases, and hence are referred to here as potter's marks, instead of being related to their contents or owners. The first main reason which led to this assumption regards the position of the marks themselves. Their location at the vase bottom and the subsequent difficulty at inspecting the motifs, all the more so when the pots were filled, allow one to rule out the possibility that the signs bore some information about the content. The second aspect that points to the fact that the relief pot marks define the producer of the vases is the contextual analysis of the Yatriada's marked vessels. The largest quantity of the relief marks found at the site comes indeed from the same primary deposit. Assuming that, being the same context, the marked vessels found together belonged to the same owner, being a single person or an household, and considering that each vase bore a different motive, it is possible to reject the hypothesis that the motives were indicating the vase's owner. Study on the potter's marks from Phaistos showed another characteristic that makes them unique. In the other Bronze Age cultures, potter's marks occur only on widespread and quite standardized shapes, lacking any morphological or decorative peculiarity. As it has been argued also on the basis of ethnographic studies, such marks on virtually indistinguishable vases are likely to have been used by single artisans or potting groups in order to distinguish their outcome from that of other artisans or potting groups working in the same potting area, in particular in the case of a shared use of community kilns. This line of argument does not seem to fit, at least not completely, with the record from Phaistos. There, relief potter's marks occur equally, both on widespread and quite standardized shapes like amphoras or jars, and on specialized shapes, as we see in the slide, sometimes indeed on one unique within the whole corpus. Among the Phaestian vessels, which are a unicum and bear a relief potter's mark, is the shallow handled bowl F4718, found in 1965 in the Casa Sud della Rampa, that is a house to the south of the ramp. The house is located here, inside the red circle. This building, excavated under the direction of Doro Levi, is located in the quarter to the south of Piazzale Uno, that is the middle west court of the palace. The pot is characterized by a peculiar feature. On its inside, is a semi-cylindrical pipe of clay. We can see this pipe here and in section here. This starts at the rim, equidistant between the handles, and following the side and base of the vessel, runs to the center of the bottom, where it ends with its mouth facing upward. Both the outlets of the pipe are broken, thus preventing one to understand how the device worked. The bowl exterior is decorated in polychromy in the Camare style, with a running spiral, while the mark is located on the external bottom, which is unpainted. As it is typical with these marks, the one on the bowl from the Casa Su della Rampa comprises two elements, an external circular border with a 7.5 centimeters diameter and the motif inside it. The motif is composed by a central T element with a short vertical bar, and at each end of the horizontal bar is placed vertically a comb element. Conventionally, we are going to call this motif comb, even if there is not a clear correspondence between this sign and the actual Minoan Mycenaean combs known. The bowl with the comb pot mark was found in room 87, here in the slide, of the Casa Su della Rampa, whose material is dated to Middle Minoan 3A early. That is the very beginning of the Neopalatial phase, the beginning of the 17th century BC. As far as the chronology of the vessel is concerned, we have two ways of considering it. We can assume that the bowl is dated to Middle Minoan 3A early, like the pottery of the assemblage it belonged to, or that it was produced in Middle Minoan 2B, continued to be in service also during the very next ceramic phase, and was then discarded in the Middle Minoan 3A early deposit it was found in. The latter hypothesis is likely, as the manner of manufacture and decoration of the bowl fit better with Middle Minoan 2B, and because there are no other market pots coming from safe Middle Minoan 3 contexts. If the vessel is instead considered as actually made in Middle Minoan 3A early, it would represent the last product to carry a relief mark, as no specimens with this feature are known in contemporary or later deposits. Unfortunately, the vase's function remains uncertain due to the lack of comparisons and to the fragmentary condition of both ends of the pipe. However, it is clear that bowl F4718 was a specialized vessel used in connection with liquid substances. Due to the peculiar character of the bowl, Luca Girella, who studied the whole assemblage of room 87 of the Casa Su della Rampa, thought that the vase could be considered as part of a ceremonial set, together with the pedestal with the plastic dolphins, a rhyton and an amphora, which were found in the same context. Considering the vessel's rich decoration and assemblage it belongs to, it is accordingly possible to hypothesize that it was not a utilitarian vase, but one that involved a ritual use of water or other liquids and libations. A last aspect about this vase that I want to highlight is that it is the only one which bears a polychrome light-on-dark decoration, while all the other market vessels from Phaistos and, in general, from the Messara are plain, simply painted in dark on light or rarely coated with a monochrome slip. Moreover, a general character of all such systems known in Bronze Age Crete and outside it, such as in late Bronze Age Anatolia, seems to be that only plain or undecorated pottery was so marked. We have examined so thoroughly the shallow bowl from the Casa Su della Rampa as the mark it bears is basically identical to one of the 45 signs of the Phaistos disc, the number 21, the so-called comb sign. It appears twice on the side A of the disc, in both the cases as the first sign of an identical sequence composed of 7 syllabograms. Moreover, a very similar sign is found as a seal impression on the ceiling CMS 2.5, number 246. This also comes from Phaistos, from the so-called Archivio di Cretule, a deposit of administrative documents discovered in 1955, which consisted of a total of around 6,000 pieces, including ceilings and linear A tablets, found in the protopalatial levels beneath room 25 of the second palace of Phaistos. The archive is located here. As the same comb motif, with its particular and complex shape, is found 3 times with minor differences as a syllabogram, as a steel impression, and as a potmark on the bowl, it is possible to deduce that it was a meaningful and specific sign. In other words, whilst simple and identical signs may be found in different times and contexts or in different media as a result of quite independent processes, yet between identical and complex signs a more specific correlation may be supposed to exist. What are the consequences of the appearance of the same sign on 3 different artifacts? In the first place, the fact that the disc, the ceiling, and the bowl bear the same sign helps prove that the disc is genuine. Indeed, as we said, the disc was found in 1908, while the ceiling and the bowl, respectively, in 1955 and 1965, during regular excavations. This means that it would have been impossible for a hypothetical forger of the disc, recovered in 1908, to have used the ceiling or the bowl as a source, as they were found only decades later. Conversely, the comb motif is a too complicated one to have been devised by chance by a forger working without any knowledge that the motif actually existed in Minoan times. The presence of the comb sign on 3 different artifacts is not the only argument for the disc's authenticity coming from Phaistos. A study recently carried out by Alessandro Sanavia on the Festian impressed ware showed that striking similarities exist between such class of protopalatial pottery and the Phaistos disc. Impressed pots are largely represented by fine ware vessels, mainly cups of different types and bridge-spouted jars. Such vases are characterized by an array of stamped decorations of a single element, repeated in sequence, against a background of dark paint, often associated with a polychrome decoration. The impressions, like on the Phaistos disc, were made by a stamping device, whose nature is not completely clear, as none of the stamps employed to decorate these vessels has been found until now. In Sanavia's opinion, on the basis of a close observation of the stamps, the implements responsible of the impressions were specifically created for decorating the vases. For the motifs of a rather simple appearance, the employment of pieces of shells and plants can be supposed. The much finer and more complex impressions were made with a stamp of metal, ivory, or bone, while others present details which suggest that less effective materials such as wood were used. Impressed fine ware does not appear to have been very widespread, with a major number of specimens coming from the Messara, again Phaistos, Yatriada, and Commos, here, and from the palatial site of Knossos. On the chronological side, this ware is characteristic of the proto-palatial period, with the first attestations appearing during Middle Minoan 2a, and achieving a production on a wide scale in Middle Minoan 2b period. Subsequently, for the beginning of the Neopalatial period, Middle Minoan 3a, only some poor examples have been identified. Vases and fragments recovered at Phaistos and Yatriada, gathered and studied by Sanavia, show more than 200 different signs, mainly of a geometric type. Others are borrowed from the natural world, such as plants, but also include rare zoomorphic representations and some types of seashell-like patterns. Furthermore, it is possible to detect some representations of special objects, tools or ceremonial implements such as double axes. Only one vessel attests the representation of a human figure. The remaining part of the corpus is made up of abstract signs or unspecified subjects that find relevant parallels in the Minoan glyptic repertoire. The bulk of impressed motifs appear to have an ornamental function, with decorative arrangements obtained in the reiteration in one or more rows, usually on the shoulder or the body of the vessel, of a single stamp device. The impressed fineware shows an interesting parallel with the Phaistos disc, both for technical aspects, due to the impressions made by a stamp device, and for the presence of similar images. Sanavia found striking comparanda on impressed fineware for 6 Phaistos disc signs. The ram, sign number 30, the cat head, sign number 29, the fish, sign number 33, the rosette, sign number 38. And for the so-called strainer, a triangle filled by dots, sign number 43, and for the female figure, sign number 6. Moreover, a parallel exists between the so-called shield, a circle filled by dots, sign number 12, and the impressions on a teapot from Knossos that Sanavia recognized as an import from Phaistos. The striking similarity with Phestian Middle Minoan II impressed ware, from the iconographic, stylistic, and technical points of view, is a further clue for the verification of the Phaistos disc's authenticity, to be added to that of the comb sign. It must be stressed that the greatest part of the proto-palatial impressed pottery was recovered during the years of Doro Levi's excavations, that is from 1950 to 1966. While during the first campaigns of excavations at Phaistos by Luigi Pernier, only a few impressed fragments were discovered that do not display relevant iconographic parallels with the Phaistos disc signs. This means, again, that in 1908, a hypothetical forger of the disc could not use the motifs of the impressed ware as a source for a hoax. This new evidence from Phaistos, furthermore, supports some arguments made for the disc's authenticity that have been earlier produced. The first one is the spiral layout comparable to that of the disc of the engraved linear A inscription on the bezel of a gold ring from the Mavrospilio cave near Knossos, found in 1927 by Arthur Evans. The other is the Arcalocori bronze X, found in 1934 in a cave of Central Eastern Crete by Spiridon Marinatos. The X bears an inscription with 15 signs in 3 columns, in particular the plumed head, which is this one, that appears on the artifact has been compared to the disc sign number 2. The evidence coming from the Phestian potter's marks and impressed fine ware, besides supporting the authenticity of the disc, also has an important chronological consequence, as it gives some important information for its dating. First of all the artifacts examined come from the same site, and they belong to a quite specific time span. Second, in the case of the comb sign on 3 different objects, we can be clear of a one-to-one resemblance. On the contrary, one must be wary of comparisons between the signs of the disc and other archaeological finds previously proposed to define the disc's chronology. They can easily mislead, as graphic representation does not need to follow that closely the original prototype. The attestation of the comb on 3 artifacts, in all the cases as a stamped sign, impressed in relief from a potter's butt on the bowl, from a seal on the ceiling, and from a stamp on the disc, seems to carry a particular chronological and spatial dimension, as the 3 artifacts come from the same sites, and their varied fine spots belong to a quite specific time span. The ceiling is dated to the end of the proto-palatial period, likely to the very end, middle Minoan to be in ceramic terms. As we said before, the bowl's deposition in the Casa Sud della Rampa is dated to Middle Minoan 3A early, but on stylistic basis, a Middle Minoan 2B date for the vessel cannot be ruled out. The Phestian impressed ware, that shares striking iconographic, stylistic, and technical similarities with the disc, is dated to Middle Minoan 2B in particular, with only few examples found in Middle Minoan 3A. Summing up all the data at our disposal, what can we conclude about this chronology? All the comparisons point to the end of the proto-Palatial period, or at least of the very beginning of the Neo-Palatial, Middle Minoan 2b, 3a in ceramic terms, as the best fit. The chronology of Middle Minoan 3a ripe for the context of the disc, as verified by the recent fieldwork, must be taken as a clear terminus ante quem. Also, we cannot exclude the chance that the disc made during the last phase of the Proto-Palatial period, Middle Minoan 2b, was preserved and continued to be in use during the next ceramic phase, thus becoming associated in the archaeological record with Middle Minoan 3a ripe material. To conclude, the concept of utter uniqueness that has been applied to the Phaistos disc has to be at least reviewed. It is true that no similar artifacts have been found in Crete or anywhere in the Aegean. It is also true that the disc is a special artifact. This is due to the fact that it is not a utilitarian object or an administrative document intended to be preserved in an archive for a limited time span. The repetition of certain combinations of signs gives a strong indication that the inscription renders a text of a religious or magical nature. Moreover, the fact that the disc had been fired intentionally when taken together with the almost unique spiral layout structure of the inscription make it likely that this was an artifact intended for display. Bearing in mind the special character of the disc, but looking at it from an archaeological perspective, it does not appear quite as isolated as before. In comparison with other classes of materials, apparently very distinct from it, like the Phaestian potter's marks and impressed ware, the disc seems to fit well enough into the cultural context of Phaistos during the passage from the Proto-Palatial to the Neo-Palatial period. Not only the disc finds its place in a site where the use of writing is well known, but fits also in the skilled artisanal context of the pottery making. Let's remember that the disc is first of all a clay artifact, and of the sphagistic practices of stamping designs at the site, whether they are seals, decorative elements, potter's marks, or script signs. I want to conclude by saying that from this archaeological perspective, we can hope that studies currently carried out on the various classes of material from Phaistos, even if apparently very far from the disc in their nature, may in the future bring new information that will allow to understand more properly this enigmatic artifact. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Giorgia. That was great. Thank you so much. Let me put my video on again. Thank you. Great. You really have fit the Phaistos disc into its context, into its artisanal context in a very clear way. I was very struck by that comb feature that is found 3 times, although it's not exactly identical, but the prongs are not identical, but it really is truly quite evident that you have interfaces with the marks on pots. Of course, the next question is to take this a step forwards and think, is there a way that we can, on the one hand, draw a trajectory in making marks on pots and the relations with writing systems in general, and on the other, which is something that has been studied quite a lot analytically. I'm thinking in Cyprus, pot marks studied by Nicole Hirschfeld vis-a-vis the Cypriot writing system, and also when it comes to the Cretan hieroglyphic and pot marks from the MM2 period.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, there's this trajectory between pot marks and the relationship with writing systems as such, which may be more sort of, ephemeral than anything else. We don't see a very structured methodology or very structured basis or substratum for a logical connection and a direct connection, more than logical, direct connection. And on the other, is there a way that we can fit the signs on the Phaistos disc onto the other writing systems of Minoan Crete, the Cretan hieroglyphic and Linear A specifically in terms of paleography? And I know that you're not a script person, but clearly these two sort of methodological stances need to be seen as much as a broader cultural context that you have thrown light on. So how would you go about setting out a methodological trajectory for these two big problems?
These are really big problems, and what I can say for the moment, my study about the postmarks is in progress, but what can I say for the moment is that this sign is the only one which finds a parallel with the script. This means that we cannot generalize this relationship. So I think that postmarks are quite actually distant from writing systems in this moment, because I have likely I have like 60 different motifs on postmarks, and only one is finds a comparison with the script sign. I have no comparisons with the Linear A or hieroglyphic, for example.
Okay, so there's no way that we can trace a common trajectory that can point out.
At the moment, I feel no. I feel that there can be some points of connection.
Yes.
But I think that the two systems are quite independent.
Yes. Well, they can be intertwined, but that is, from a methodological stance, it has to be studied much more, I guess.
Yeah.
In the same way in which, as I mentioned, Nicole Hirschfeld did with the Cypriot example.
Yeah.
I have a tiny sort of point of detail. You seem to suggest, but again, I'm sort of tying this in with a script mentality, as it were.
Yeah.
You seem to suggest that the Phaistos disc is a syllabary, because you mentioned that comb sign and you defined it as a syllabogram.
Yeah.
Is that something that sort of that?
Yes, I'm just I just took some of the more I took the commonest view, I think.
Okay.
The most common view, but it's not something I studied, so
we could open a big debate on this.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes, so it's just a sort of a tantalizing suggestion that it may be a syllabary, but yes, I mean that needs to be probed into in quite an in-depth way. Yeah. Okay, any more questions? Anybody? And could I please encourage you to ask your questions live instead of using the chat platform, so that we can see your faces and hear your voices. Thank you.
Hi, may I ask as first of you? Thank you, Giorgia, for this very interesting talk. I have a lot of questions, but I will limit to two. One is related to the chronology of the disc, because your study seems to imply the possibility of bringing it back to Middle Minoan to B, which would be contemporaneous to the large part of the linear documents attested in Phaistos. And so I would like to ask you whether you think this chronology, so this adaptation to the Middle Minoan to be, may be supported, at least for the production of the artifact, I mean, even though it was recovered in a Middle Minoan 3 context, as Pietro Militello has shown. I
think that Middle Minoan to be chronology is possible, I feel that it's possible also middle Minoan 3A. I think that this is a time span, because we have I think that the best parallels are in middle Minoan 2B. But
Okay.
it's just on the basis of the parallels, because the impressed ware is mainly middle Minoan 2B. The bowl with the comb sign can be dated both to middle Minoan 2B or middle Minoan 3A. So I think that we have a time span which is quite close.
Yeah, so we can say that the evidence provided by pot marks and internal to Phaistos disc is more to middle Minoan 2B than 3A.
Yeah, on the basis of on a stylistic basis, yes, yes. But I think that also middle Minoan 3A, it's fine.
Yes, we can exclude it, of course.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. We cannot
evidence to think of this, and no, I'm stressing this because I see also some link with a Cretan hieroglyphic, and so whose florit was in middle Minoan 2B, and on the wall this artifact might belong to the middle Minoan 2B phase, then although this found in a middle Minoan 3A.
Yeah. And as I told, it's a special artifact, so it's possible that it was preserved through the years, and we are speaking about 100 years, not 1000. So it's possible that it was produced a little bit earlier and then continued to be in use also in the next phases.
And indeed, as you stressed, it was intentionally fired, which is not a common practice that period. So this also may mean something about its use and the intention of preserve this artifact through time. Yeah.
I see that there's Cassandra Donnelly as well. So maybe we can start a conversation about the pot marks, because Cassandra has been working on the pot marks in Cyprus as well. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I have been working on the pot marks at Cyprus. Primarily, like what I'm doing right now is looking at the paleography of the Minoan corpus with reference to the paleography of the pot marks.
And do you find confirmation of what Nicole has been working on? Do you see a connection?
Yeah, for sure. So there are a number of complex signs where the majority of sign variants that we see in the inscription corpus are also present on the pot marks.
Great.
So I think that's some good evidence that for the complex signs, the people who are making them know how to make them, or at least have been exposed to enough material that they're able to copy them in a variety of ways.
Indeed. And Giorgia seemed to have suggested that they were related to provenance. Is that what you...
Sorry?
To the content. Sorry, to the content.
No. It's related. They are related to the producers.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is something that we don't really see on Cyprus at all. Is that?
Because they are located on the bottom of the vases, so you couldn't look at them when the vase was in its vertical position. All the more if the vessel was full.
Yeah, they were not on display, as it were.
Yeah.
For easy reading. Or whatever.
I had a question, if that's okay.
Of course, go ahead.
Is a kind of annoying one in the sense that it's a terminological question, and I think there's like absolutely no right or wrong answer, but I was curious, when you've been working on them, did you struggle with calling them pot marks? Was there other terminology you wanted to use, or was it just sort of like the convention that has been used before you and it just feels like an easy enough shorthand?
I must say that no one really cared about these pot marks before me. Doro Levi just wrote in the book about the proto-palatial pottery. Doro Levi noted the existence, but really they didn't care before, because they had so many wonderful pots to describe, wonderful decorations, and they had to to study the typology. So no one really cared about these marks that many, in the majority of the cases, are found just on shards. So you have, they are not so beautiful when you look at them. So I am the first one in the in Phaistos that is studying such marks. So it's a new field for us.
Great. Awesome. Fantastic. Any more questions? Anyone?
I have a question. Could the pot marks be related to location as opposed to the maker? Namely, the location of the maker.
Location, do you mean, for example, different sites where the pots were produced?
Right, because that way that might also be of interest on the Phaistos disc itself.
Yeah, it's this is another yes, it is an interesting question, because for example, if we find the same pot mark in two sites, we have in two different sites, we have the indication that the same potter made pots that arrived in two different places. So yes, in this sense, these marks as indicators of the craftsman who made the pot can give some indication about the provenance of the pot. I don't know.
Yeah, because it seems if it's the meaning is the same on the Phaistos disc, that it's maybe unlikely that it's referring to actual makers, but it may be related to something, you know, that like location might be one possible thing that it could be referring to.
I don't know. I think that those baths were like personal, was part of where they were part of the tools of the artisan. So I think that they refer to the person who made them.
Yeah.
Or the workshop.
Yeah. Have you ever found a workshop archaeologically?
We didn't find. We know where the poaching area in Phaistos was. It was in the. It was quite close to the palace. So it's possible that the vases were made in this part of the site.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, great. We have a question in the chat, which I was hoping would never come up. What is the most probable language inscribed in the Phaistos disc? And the $1,000 million question.
I feel that it can be a language spoken or known in Phaistos during the end of the Proto-Palatial period or beginning of the Neo-Palatial one.
Very diplomatic.
Politically correct
Very diplomatic answer. We have another one from Ornella. Hi, everybody. Unfortunately, my microphone is not working. Okay. Could petrographic analysis be done on the disc in order to study the material? I hope that modern analysis can make a careful examination without damaging the artifact. Petrographic analysis.
Petrographic. I think that petrographic analysis, many times thermoluminescence has been invoked, but this is a destructive analysis.
But to what extent is it destructive, actually? This is a question.
Because for thermoluminescence, they need to take a little bit of the artifact, so it's a destructive analysis. And this is an analysis that needs to be done for to have the proof that the disc is authentic. But I don't feel that it's necessary. I don't think that it's necessary to do this kind of analysis. Petrography could give some information about the clay, but on a macroscopic aspect, the clay, it's the same clay used for the pottery in the Phaistos area.
It's identical, would you say?
It's this pinkish clay that is found in all the Messara.
So that should put to rest all the doubts that have been raised over the years.
Yeah.
Almost, well, more than a century about the authenticity.
Yeah.
Right? Although there is a little bit of a debate about the chronology, I seem to remember a book written by Godard in 1990 that mentions a completely different chronology.
Yeah, Godard
down to the end of the Bronze Age, which is completely not.
Godard states that the disc has to have late Minoan 1 as a terminus postquem, sorry. Because there is a resemblance between...
I think it's actually later than that he claims it to be dated.
It just says that this is a terminus. There is a terminus postquem that is the late Minoan 1b. But because he finds a comparison between the dolium, the sign number... he finds a comparison between the dolium, which is...
I seem to remember that it was the Mohican.
The shell, where is the shell? It must be here. I don't see.
Number 8.
No, it's not this one. Why I don't, sorry.
It doesn't matter.
It's this one, because it is the dolium. There is, I don't know why in this... however, Godard sees a dolium, which is a shell, and he finds a comparison in the villa at Yatriada with an obsidian replica of a dolium. So this is, and that obsidian replica is dated to late Minoan 1b. So he feels that he says that this is a terminus postquem. But actually, there are some dolium have been found already in Middle Minoan 2b in the Palace of Phaistos. So it is not a comparison that so meaningful. And as I said, when you compare a sign with a archaeological find, it can be really misleading, because such signs are stylized, so it's not easy. Also, another argument that Godard uses to date the disc after the late Minoan 1b is the ship. This ship that is found a similar ship is found on the Moklos ring, which is dated in late Minoan 1b. But I think maybe Barbara can tell us that a similar sign is used also in linear A, I think.
No, we find it in pre-palatial and proto-palatial as well.
Yeah. So,
but Barbara can of course add to that. I seem to remember that his argument was based on number 2, the Mohican, which brings us back to Medinet Abu and Sardan, I think, but let's not talk about that. The point being that the chronology that you set out seems to be quite uncontroversial, as it were.
If I may, as regards the boat, it is true that the shape of the ship motif on the Phaistos disc is more similar to the linear A sign 86 than to the Cretan hieroglyphic one, because so to speak, the Cretan hieroglyphic sign consistently has a semicircular shape with the mast in the middle, whereas this semi-circular shape with the pole at the right side is more similar to the linear side. I suppose that the argument stems from that fact. I don't know if this is helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions? We have Jim Cleary. A couple of comments. Jim, would you like to to say, well, to tell us your questions, or do you want me to read them? A fascinating presentation and wonderful to see evidence emerging supporting the authenticity. Thank you so much for holding these seminars and making them accessible. Oh, thank you, thank you. It's a privilege to be able to listen. Thank you so much, Jim. Sorry, I thought it was a question, but it's not. Thank you. Do we have any more questions, real questions? Out of interest, curiosity, ignorance, because we know so little about this disc. Anybody?
If I may, another question, very quick.
Of course.
Even though I have already asked before, but if I may. I wanted to ask, do we have any other instance of a motif both repeated on potmark and on seal beyond the comb mark? Because you've shown that the comb mark is also found in a ceiling from Phaistos. I wonder, is this an unicum, or do we have other shared motifs between the seal imagery and the potter's marks, or as I want to?
At the moment, no, but my work is in progress, and it can be. It's a path that I have to explore. Also, the view of this correspondence between the comb sign on the ceiling and as a pot mark. So yes, it's at the moment no, but it's something that has to be verified.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Georgia.
Can I be very blunt and ask a question to my inscribers? Looking at this repertoire of signs, is there a way that you see, looking at this repertoire of signs on the Phaistos disc, is there a way that you can see comparisons with Cretan hieroglyphic at all?
As far as
Go.
No, please, Miguel.
Oh, I was just going to say that, yes, a priori and in a sort of superficial way, yes, of course. And I think I would see the same kinds of similarities that everyone has seen before and published about, both with Cretan hieroglyphic and linear A. Of course, I suppose we tend to think more of Cretan hieroglyphic because of the iconicity of these motifs versus the more schematic shape of linear A signs. I guess it's something that could be looked into in a more systematic way now that new evidence has been brought forth by Giorgia and also by the work of Alessandro Sanavia. But yes, I wouldn't dare say more for now.
Okay, very cautious, quite rightly so. I see that Pippa still is there as well. Hi Pippa, how are you? Lovely to see you there. I wanted to ask you the same question actually. I don't know if people can hear us. Never mind. Okay.
What I find interesting is this sort of but maybe it's superficial, this sort of paradox whereby at least I see some signs that resemble more later shapes of linear A signs and Cretan hieroglyphic signs, but of course we have more limited evidence for Cretan hieroglyphic. But now that we have this Middle Minoan 2b and or Middle Minoan 3 date, it's an interesting paradox and an interesting problem, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I take the chance to say thank you, Giorgia. I enjoyed the talk very much. I had read your article also, which is very well explained, so I enjoyed it, reading it a lot, and maybe that's why I don't have so many questions today. Thank you.
B, did you want to add to this?
No, I completely agree with Miguel. And for example, I noticed a resemblance, at least superficially, between sign 43, the dotted triangle, and the linear in the earliest attestation of sign AB 66, TA2. And I wonder to what extent, because in the common shape of or the most popular shape of 66 is with a vertical stroke, but we do have at least one attestation from Phaistos, from Minoan, to be with where this sign has no vertical stroke. So it is interesting because of the early date, and it also opens the question whether some signs are not yet attested in Cretan hieroglyphic, but might be found in the future when more documents will be available, as for example in this case. So it's difficult to judge how similar are these signs to linear Aeon Cretan hieroglyphic, also because, at least in my opinion, because we are not sure we really have all the signs which formed the Cretan hieroglyphic repertoire. Maybe we still miss something.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very right. We have another question. Is the Phaistos disc the only one of its kind? Are there any other inscriptions bearing the signs from the disc? Giorgia, would you like to reply to this one?
I would say that it is a unicum. Someone sees a comparison with the script on the Archaeology X, but there is no agreement on this. So I would say that at the moment this disc is a unicum.
And this is why we're being so very cautious with drawing comparisons with other writing systems that are nearby and coeval, clearly being the unique specimen and not inscribed at that because it's stamped. So it really is a very special artifact. Well, the big question is, what was it used for? Since it's so special, since it was made to be fired and thus to be preserved, what was it used for?
Of course, it does not. I think that it has not a practical. It is not a practical object.
Use it as a coaster.
It's not a practical object. So and it is not an administrative document. We have no numbers on it. So I feel that it could be like an inscription of religious nature or magic.
Mm-hmm.
And,
like the Mehen, the Egyptian Mehen, could it be?
I don't know about them.
Okay, it's a game that was used in religious practice as well. Okay.
Yes, I was also actually going to ask about that. I think that was put forward. The comparison was put forward, I think, in a 2005 article by Ellen Whitaker, maybe.
Yeah. It has been proposed that it could be a table for games. Yeah.
Do you have any special take on that, since you have this knowledge of the broader context of the disc? Do you have an opinion regarding that comparison, that possibility?
Not really. In Militello's opinion, the building where the disc was found was a building used for the treatment, for the production of some liquids. So this is we have to understand why this special object was inside a building that was a production building. And I don't know. I don't know why.
It remains mysterious. We have a message from Pippa who couldn't hear us. She's having some technical difficulties. Okay. Oh, I wanted to ask her that question. I'll send you an email, Pippa. Okay, great. Do we have any more? One last question for Giorgia.
Okay.
I'm so grateful that you didn't mention the word decipherment only once. I think I'm very grateful that you didn't venture into saying, you know, the Finno-Ugric interpretation is the right one.
Or the Basque.
The Basque. anymore. If not, it was great to have you. Next time in Bologna live.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being with us. It was great. And I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I'm sure we did. Cassandra says, thank you for a great talk and a convincing argument. I think you left us convinced. And I think now the Phaistos disc has less darkness and a little bit more light when it comes to social context, which we're very grateful for. But more to be probed, more to be found, and more to be analyzed. Yeah. So lovely to have you with us tonight, and thank you everybody for being here. It was wonderful as always, with a very lively discussion. These are becoming very dear occasions for me and great opportunities for discussions with colleagues. We have Christina, who enjoyed it very much. So great to have had Giorgia.
Thank you, Silvia. Thank you, and to everybody who listened.
Grazie mille, Giorgia.
We will be seeing you in 2 weeks' time. Francisco Sabadini says, thank you, Giorgia. Everybody's saying thank you. Everybody has enjoyed it greatly. Thank you, Giorgia.
Thank you.
We will be seeing you in 2 weeks' time on Wednesday, the 28th of October, with Stephen Chrysomalis and the invention of numbers in the world and their relation to the invention of writing. Great to have had you all here. Thank you so much for participating. See you in 2 weeks' time, same time, live on Facebook and on Zoom. We will be posting this video tomorrow on our YouTube channel and on our Invention of Scripts in the Beginnings Inscribed website, so you can watch it fully in its full version, discussion included. And we will be sending you the link for Stephen Chrysomalis' talk in 2 weeks' time. Thank you so much, everybody. Lovely to have had you here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Grazie, Giorgia.
Ciao, 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 ciao. Grazie di tutto. Ciao.
Ciao, grazie, grazie.